and try it, and we haven't had much of it, if we argue against it, all they're doing is just way out in the field and ask for it. That could kind of take away from the credibility.
Well, folks, it's 6:30. I'm Doug DeVore. This is Wade Mitchell, as you can see by our names. I want to welcome everybody for coming. I want to commend Wade for coming tonight, because it's not easy to show up, and it's not easy for anybody to quit early. Craig, this time of year, Craig Sass just texted me that he had something come up and he didn't think he was going to be able to make it. Darren has indicated he would be here, but he's not here. So I am disappointed that we've only got 2 members out of the 4. If you're probably aware that Russell Peterson had stepped down a while back. All right. Let's start out by looking at our flag and pledging of allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The last words of that pledge is with liberty and justice for all, and I think that's why we're here. We want all property owners to have their property rights and the liberties to do as they wish, but at the same time, the justice for all, we have to have justice for all property owners and their rights. And it's a fine line that we're treading here, and we're gonna discuss some things tonight. It's unfortunate that it'll just Wade and myself here unless someone comes in late. I don't know how official, I'll call the meeting to order as 2 of us here, and if there are no objections from Wade, I'll act as the temporary sitting-in chairperson. Is that a problem? And Andrew Dvorak, and I believe someone else will be taking notes, but Andrew will take the notes as a temporary fill-in. Our zoning administrator, Todd Apfel, had indicated to me a while back that he was advised by his attorney not to come to this meeting tonight, not to have any meetings, which I feel is unfortunate, but that's the way it is. And Wade and I feel strongly enough about this. I believe Craig does too. And Darren, I wish was here because I'm anxious to hear his input on some of these things. It's unfortunate they're not here. But we're gonna move on as best we can with the 2 of us and possibly some input from the public. Thank you for coming. Now, Wade and I are 2 different people, so we have 2 different ways of looking at things. I was gonna kind of go over our Tama County ordinance as is and ask for changes to it as we go along. Wade really likes the Worth County ordinance, as I do too, and we may kind of jump back and forth and juggle between the 2.
I think input would be good. I don't know if we can make any motions or pass anything with just 2 of us, but I think we can, get an idea of where we wanna go with this. The Tama County ordinance is 7 pages long, 7 whole pages, and it's big print. The Worth County ordinance is 36 pages long and fine print. And going through the Worth County ordinance, I didn't see anything in there that I would not keep. And everything that's in the Tama County ordinance is covered in the Worth County. I didn't see anything we have in the Tama County that wasn't covered in Worth County, and more explicitly, the things such as dismantling and so on like that are covered so much more thoroughly in the Worth County ordinance, and the setbacks and the sound, that rather than waste time with the Tama County, I'd rather get input on the Worth County ordinance from people, and for us to go through and discuss that. There are a few things in the Worth County ordinance that I would maybe like to tweak a little bit more, such as when the Worth County ordinance is very explicit, when these are being built and constructed, that the condition of the roads is examined, and any upgrades or maintenance or any damage to the roads, they have to be brought back up to what they were at least by, the wind company and the construction. And we're not quite as strong on that, but, when it comes to tearing them down and removing them, there wasn't as much, text, or it wasn't as explicit about that part of maintenance. And they pulled out of here and you got the wind out of here and everything was torn down and that was fine, but then you ended up with roads that were trashed, that would be a big, an expense for the Tama County residents. And that's one of the things that, to me, I would really wanna protect, is that we don't leave something where down the road, we could have hundreds of millions of dollars of expense that got left back on Tama County, because of different federal regulations or things that come down, and now there's a new federal regulation that these things have to comply with, and they don't, and, you know, the county gets left holding the bag, so.
Did you meet Darren?
Yes.
Welcome.
Thank you for coming.
Now, I wanna
Thank
make
you.
sure we got it spelled right. We tried 2 different ways, Darren.
Oh, yeah.
That one?
Yeah, oh, just flip it around.
So he
Cover the bases.
was thinking about going through the Tama County one, all 7 pages. And I was, this is gonna take time and it's tedious, but I think the Worth County ordinances, to me, would be the starting place.
If you can bear with me, Wade and Darren. I'm trying to stick with the agenda, and I'd like to kinda go in order of the Tama County, and we will refer back to can we do that, to the Worth? Can we make that work? The first, let's try it. The first subject of contention is setbacks, and that's on page 11 of the Worth County ordinance, I believe. And we don't have numbers. I need to get you a copy here, Darren. I've got it here somewhere. Be patient with us, folks. We're not used to having a crowd here.
How many usually attend?
It's been a long time since we've met. You know, so that-
4 or 5 usually.
Yes.
Somebody that needs a zoning change or.
Yeah.
I have 2 extra copies of it. We're starting right with setbacks. Right here. So setbacks for Tama, as we have it now, following setbacks shall be applied to all wind turbines, meteorological towers. Structures. Each wind turbine and tower shall be set back from the nearest residence, school, hospital, church, or public library no less than 2 times its total height or 1,000 feet. And the, what do we have on this one, Wade? On Worth's.
1,600 feet and 3.75 times the total height. Where instead of 2, it's 3.75, and instead of 1,000 feet, it's 1,600.
You got that, Darren? So we're at 1,000 feet in Tama. Worth is at 1,600 or 3.75 times the total height of the turbine. This is gonna call for a lot of compromising.
That's like 2,000 feet for a 640-foot wind turbine, I would assume.
You're probably close, if they're not right. I talked to, what's her name? The gal from the zoning coordinator from Grundy County today. She called me back, I left her a message. They had recently gone through some changes, as I had heard. They had decided to go with a setback from any residence 5 times the total height of their turbine, including the blade extended above it. So their rough measurements were a 500-foot tall turbine has about 120 some feet of blade above it. So roughly you're 628 feet times 5, 3,140 feet. That's approximately 6/10 of a mile. 3,100 out of 5,280. Is that acceptable? That's 3,100 feet. Here we got the greater of 1,600 feet or 3 3/4 times the total height, right? That's buildings. Human is the same, isn't it? Anytime you wanna pipe in, Darren, you feel free to do it.
Okay.
We value everybody's opinion here on the board. Darren's relatively new to the board here. This is probably the first meeting we've sat in with together, isn't it? So Wade, which one is more conducive to being acceptable?
Well, I think what Worth County has is, but, you know, multiple times what we have, the one where confinement feeding operations, that one I kind of question if that one, what Worth County has, if that's far enough, right, if it's a property owner, if the confinement feeding operations belong to the property owner that has the windmill, then I don't have a problem with it being so close.
Right.
But otherwise, if it's gonna create issues with somebody's livestock, then I think that setback could be a little further.
So it could be 2 different definitions.
There are some of the other ones, like some of those noise things, it depends if it's noise to somebody that has the windmill, or if it's noise on somebody that isn't.
Right.
And I think that's kind of, if you're a property owner and you wanna have all that racket, like, go ahead and have it, as far as I'm concerned, but you don't give it to somebody else.
I agree.
It's just like the grain beds, you fire that up in the fall and noise rattles the house, but it's your bin.
It's your noise to put up with.
So are
As
you
long as-
considering putting those distances from property line then instead of the residence, like some of the ordinances say?
We could consider that.
Sure.
Instead of, go ahead, Wade.
There are adjacent property lines, like in the Worth County ordinance, there are distances from just property lines that are not, don't have a residence. And-
Cause you have to consider, farmers in their field, they're not living there, but they are working there and they have to deal with everything too, so.
And they may wanna build on their property at any time, and they don't know ahead of time where they're gonna wanna build.
I do have some photos I printed out, if you guys would like those now, or can save it for later. With distances, setback distances.
That's fine if you wanna bring them up here.
So these are for proposed Salt Creek ones so far, sorry. There's a little legend at the bottom and a couple different properties, but the yellow is based off of a right of way, which they only have at 704 feet, which would mean that their height would only be 352 feet tall turbine, which seems
Small,
odd
short.
since their FAA regulation was approved at 600 feet. But this is the right of way, this is what they call a 1,000-foot notification distance and a 1,500 feet residence. So So you can see how some of the other people's land that's not there is in that zone. And there's one that this person is in either of those turbines and he's overlapped it too. So you guys can keep those.
Thank you.
And I think what this one is also showing is a certain landowner had signed up and they put it next to everybody else's. You look at their acreage and there was no turbines. You look at everybody else's acreage and what's infringing on their property, and that's what that would show you if you guys wanna look at it later too.
That is a concern. We're gonna go through and discuss some of these other items tonight. As we go, we might not make decisions right away, we might make a decision at the end on what we're gonna do, what we're gonna recommend to the Board of Supervisors. As you can see, we've spent 15 minutes just discussing setbacks and we haven't come to a, what's the word, an agreement or a
Conclusion?
conclusion or a consensus, because this is delicate. And it depends, like Wade said, on whether you're living there, whether it's your house, whether it's somebody else's house, whether it's you're putting up with the noise, whether it's someone else putting up with the noise. Speaking of noise, I think, no, that is my next item. What do we have for property lines? 1.5 times total height in Worth, is that right? Well, we just talked about that, didn't we?
Jason property line 1.25 total height.
And that is what,
Or manufactured safety distance. Whichever greater.
and all we have in Tama County is no time shall any part of the wind turbine or tower overhang an adjoining property without securing appropriate easements from adjoining property owners. To me, that is too lax. Grundy County is the same as Worth, I believe, 1.25 times the height from the property line. All right, let's just jump to noise without making any decisions there. Tama County's 60 decibels shall not exceed 60 at any period of time. I do not see anything else really addressed there. You follow me there? Correct me if I'm wrong, please. And what does Word say about noise, Wade?
Sound emissions from the turbine operator shall not exceed the following limits on property of THL landowner from the outside edge of turbine to the nearest outside edge of any human occupiable building, 50 dBA L-max, daytime or nighttime noise. And then they got, there are different things for 60 dBA L-max fast, daytime or nighttime noise, 60 dBG L-max fast, daytime or nighttime noise.
What's their lowest?
45.
45?
Is the- And so some of those are like, if it's a continuous noise or something that just comes and goes.
Can you tell me what page that's on, please?
That's on 14 on Worth.
Okay, thank you.
And a human occupiable building of an adjacent property, no measured sound above 45 dBA max fast, 60 dBA fast, and 85 during daytime periods, and no measurable above 35 L max fast, 50 dBc L max fast, and 60 dBg L max fast during nighttime periods. Have to really say of it.
Go ahead.
Of an adjacent property, no measured sound above 45 dBA L max fast, 60 dBc L max fast, 85 dBg L max fast during daytime periods, and no measurable sound above 35 dBA L max fast, 50 dBc L max fast, 60 dBg L max fast during nighttime periods. So, see, these are, when you're talking about dBg, dBA, dBc, those are different ways of measuring the sound. I just saw a thing where the World Health Organization said that nothing should be above 45 dBA now in the residential, and that's from the World Health Organization. But we kinda need to get specific on how these noises are. It's quite a bit different if it's a continuous noise and if it's a tone or something like that, or if it's something that, like a tractor running in the field that comes and goes. you know, or, a neighbor had a dry-in bin and the burner would kick on and that would kick off and that would kick on and
Right.
kick off and when he got done drying corn, I could start sleeping again at night, but.
I always missed hearing the geese flying over at night when the fan was running. You didn't get to hear the geese. I was over at my nephew Luke DeVork's a while back, and there's a turbine pretty close to him there. I imagine is that Vienna that's over there?
I'm glad we're here.
And it was that whoosh, 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 whoosh. Now, I could put up with that during the day when I'm working and around noise, but if I wanted to try to get a rest at night and had a window open, that would be annoying.
Well, this is just like what I told about my neighbor's dry-in bin, and in the daytime I never even heard it, it was running all day, but when you go to bed at night, you know, and with the window shut and everything else, and the sound was not that loud, but it was, just kinda depend on what it was. And some of these kind of address that a little more, you know, if it's a continuous tone, or if it's, what it is, and so this is something I think, before we agree on something or what we're gonna do there, we need to research that a little more.
Right.
And we need, like, read a little bit more about what the World Health Organization, some of these new regulations they've come out with. I've seen some that India just came out with that were like 35 dBA. And this isn't something that's impossible to do, if you got a transmission or gearbox up in this thing that's whining, you just make one that doesn't whine, or, you know, you can design gears that don't have the noise. If it's one of these high-pitched tones or something like that, this sound, the wish from the blade, that could be a little different. And then that's another, we could spend another whole meeting discussing subaudible tones, because I mean, they are absolutely health damaging. And in World War II, Hitler used subaudible tones as a weapon, and you have military weapons that create subaudible tones, and they're pretty easy to make, actually, you know. So you don't hear them, and you don't even know they're there, but they can really tear you up and create very, very serious health problems. So to try to get through everything tonight, I don't know how we do it, because we need to take one piece like that and get the research on it, and then come out with the right conclusion for it.
We're gonna hear that a lot as we go on.
And in the Worth County, in the event the noise due to when the operation is a steady, pure tone, such as a whine, screech, or hum, the standards for the audible noise set forth above shall be reduced by 5 dBA. So some of these things in Worth County, they are addressing. And if we kind of take that and go through to make sure that they didn't miss something, but you know, then that, which is, you know, we're kind of, and these might have been good back in those days when,
Something was made.
yeah, we liked loud music and took mufflers off of cars. You know, but it's a little.
You got anything to add, Derek? You know, Todd, I absolutely mentioned it to me that when I mentioned we needed to possibly lower these decibel levels, he says, well, you guys in your drying bins, you know, you make a lot more noise than that. Well, that's a temporary thing. It's in the fall for a few weeks period of time.
It's part of living in the country.
It's part of living in the country, exactly.
That's what I'm talking about, like the neighbor's combine is driving by the field and, you know, you're making noise, but or mowing the lawn. On Sunday, the neighbor's mowing the lawn, you know.
Right. I remember, go ahead.
But he's not doing it at night when you're trying to sleep either.
I remember one Sunday this is years ago, I was up in Decorah area hunting deer in October, early muzzleloader. And you just want everything to be as quiet as it can be so you can hear every leaf crack. Some guy had to be running his bin not too far away, and I thought, you know, I'm a farmer, I understand this, but it really ticks me off.
Well, there is a correct answer for this, and we just need to find it.
Right.
And I think what Worth County here is a really good starting place, with some of these things, like when the World Health Organization just came out with a new standard, and they brought that down that much, we need to make sure that that's
Addressed.
still met in this. And I don't think that's, except it's just gonna take some time.
Right, and that's why we need to have zoning meetings periodically and not just every 2
Uh.
years or 3 years or whatever, as things change, we need to address them.
But
Does anybody have an opinion on it out there in the public? Yes, Scott?
Well, as these windmills have come into fruition over the last 15, 20 years, a lot of information now is being learned about them and about how detrimental they actually are to the environment, to the people around them, to the noise, especially this, sub-audible tones that affect the equilibrium and things like this. If we look at a lot of reports coming out of Germany, Australia, Europe, who jumped into this headlong before the research was done, they are now starting to back out of these things, and as we can see from the Ukraine war and them losing their energy, now their wind is not sufficing for them, solar is not getting them the power that they need. And along with that, we're finding out that a lot of these things are made in a foreign country. And that foreign country is not friendly to us or anyone else. So as we go through with these things too, we have to take into consideration those entities, but it gets away from kind of what you said, but the noise levels, the sound of them. Are they producing what they need to, that they say they are, and what we're starting to find out is that they're really not. So we have to be careful that we're not being fleeced and just trying to please, people who have the money that they're getting subsidized from the government to build these things, and then later take off and leaving us with it's just like the decommissioning that you talked about earlier. That's another huge part of these that we haven't got to.
We're gonna get to that.
But, I don't mean to jump ahead of you or anything, but it's just that there is a lot of stuff we're learning now about these windmills and things that are, detrimental to the wildlife, livestock, the electricity that can travel under the ground when it's dry, they're finding, hog confinements that are near these things, they're actually electrocuting their livestock. So, you guys have a lot on your plate with this.
Right.
And I admire you doing this, and, there's no way you'll ever do this in one meeting,
Nope,
and I certainly don't expect you to.
I don't either.
We really
We're just
appreciate you
scratching
showing
the
us.
surface of what this is all really, what it really is it, and the sad part is you guys are in the position of, alright, is this really a good thing or a bad thing? And we have to, you're stuck in the middle of protecting the landowner who wants to do these things and protecting the citizens that don't wanna be encroached upon by the noise, the lights, the losing the beauty of looking out their window and seeing an industrial wind farm out there in front of them that now, me as a landowner, the way this sets, I'm gonna have 3 or 4 of them right by my house. My acreage is worth nothing anymore. I have no retirement value in that anymore. I have lost my investment in my future. And,
It's a delicate balance we're trying to
it is, it's a
find.
delicate balance to figure out what is the right direction to go.
Yes, is it Laura?
I know you guys are looking for solutions so that both sides can be okay. If we're looking just at the noise ordinance, I haven't been able to read the Worth one yet, but, would you consider some type of, a way to,
buffer,
no, to enforce it? To check it, have checks on it, to have
Worth County
enforcement.
covers that very well.
Worth County
Complaint
has-
process, yeah.
They'd have to put up a bond, and you bring in people that monitor that, and they have to be people that have no connection with the wind or no connection with you, I mean,
Third party.
totally third party, and it's kinda specific about how they do it, like you can't do it when the wind's blowing the other way, that has to, the times and things like that have to cover what it really is. So Worth County is pretty good on that.
Would we ever just consider like Benton County, where you just do a CSR rating and then you don't have to deal with all this? I mean, I'm just bringing up a suggestion. So no industrial construction on corn suitability rating of 70 or higher.
Yeah, I'll repeat that, since Darren isn't familiar with it either.
Oh, okay,
Benton
sorry.
County, I called them quite a while ago, and they do not have a wind ordinance. They have a land use policy that states any land 70 CSR or higher, no wind turbines are permitted on.
No
Industrial wind turbines.
No industrial anything.
Or
Solar,
solar.
wind, there's no industrial.
They are definitely putting agriculture first.
And that would solve
That's
all the,
Benton County.
so that would solve all each one of the issues going down the road. That's just want to bring that one up as a
Yeah,
solution.
they don't even have an ordinance for
Right.
wind, it's just
Just a land use
if
policy.
it's CSR 70, don't put.
And I'm only a mile from Benton County, so I
And
understand.
I have heard
Yeah.
that because of that policy, people are moving into Benton County, their population has been growing, including like in their schools and their towns, so it hasn't been detrimental to have that policy for them.
Getting back to the noise and the health hazards of it, Andrew, do you wanna address anything there as far as your niece, or don't you wanna bring that up?
I have a niece that works as a floor head up at Mayo Clinic. Because it is very hard to specifically address, health issues and document, all you can do is document. Drawing an absolute conclusion can be almost impossible in the medical field. However, they do have a coined phrase that they use, and it is called turbine syndrome. When they bring people in, they ask their symptoms, and through a checklist, they go through the checklist for everything, and that is one of the things that comes up. They ask where they live and about turbines in the area. And she knows her stuff.
Thank you.
Okay, the other thing I'm gonna say is, I am gonna try to keep a timer on comments.
3 minutes to 5 minutes, you think?
Yeah, I got 3
What
minutes,
do you
30
think?
seconds on my timer.
You got what?
3 minutes, 30 seconds on my timer.
Can you live with that,
So
Darren?
far, we're doing okay.
Alright. So that was noise. Oh. Not much about, do we wanna address safety? Do they have that as a category in their code in Worth County?
Which one?
Safety? I know that's in our Tama County zoning, it's only 3 or 4 paragraphs long, it talks about wiring between turbines underground, should not be climbable up to 50 feet above the ground level.
There's quite a bit of that in Worth County. It's the same type of.
Alright,
Does Worth have the required fire suppression units on their turbines? I've read through most of it, but not all of it.
Yeah, I think the turbine, they have to do the training for the safety and the fire protection and things like that. And anything new that comes up, if they change something, they have to retrain and pay for the training.
Of the
Provide the
volunteer
training
fire
for
departments
it.
that have to.
Right. So,
I'm gonna jump to discontinuation and decommissioning. Is that alright? Or would you rather not?
no,
We were on safety, right?
Pardon? Yeah, you wanna address something on safety?
These turbines in the wintertime, which we experience here quite frequently every winter, the ice and the throwing of the ice and the livestock near there, any buildings, anything like this, when you're looking at something the height of the Statue of Liberty, and the blade is 300 feet long, and it's going 200 miles an hour, how far do you think it's gonna throw that ice as far as the setback?
Alright,
live at 1,000 feet, it's gonna smash my house. Might even kill somebody on my property. So that is a big part here living in Iowa, stuff, is the ice buildup on the blades and how far it can be thrown. Of course, probably nobody's ever looked into it deep enough to tell you, well, actually, at this speed, this rate, it can go this far and do this much damage, but that's a safety factor, that needs to be, really taken into consideration.
Thought in the Worth County ordinance that they had to have ice detection on them, and if they had ice on them, they could not run.
That's where the ordinance is. I think Worth has it where they, if
I
they
don't-
detect
can't
ice,
find
and they
it
have to
now,
shut
but
them
I
down.
thought I read that.
Mhm.
That's good.
Do you ice them?
I'm not trying to discount anything you said, Scott, or anybody else has said. I did ask the lady from Grundy County today, have you had any fires or ice throw to your knowledge yet in Grundy County? And she says, not to my knowledge that anybody has stepped up and complained, which surprised me.
But the problem is they can't complain if they sign an easement, right?
That's,
So
that's true, they got that.
that's a hard thing, when everybody signs, there's no complaints. The other safety thing is Madison County, they just recently did a 1.5 mile setback from the Board of Health. So the Madison County, Iowa Board of Health said 1.5 miles away is what everybody should be for safety and for all the different, so they might be a good one to also call, to talk to them on that. I know our Board of Health is kinda stepped back, said, we don't wanna mess with this, but let's learn from others, and if they think 1.5 miles is right, let's find out why.
I see that, 1.5 miles from non-participating landowner property line.
Yep.
2,100 feet from a participating landowner property, that's Madison County.
Yeah. It's like you said, if they signed up, it makes sense, it's right in their contract with the wind company, it can be closer. But if you don't sign up, put it farther away.
Okay, decommissioning and discontinuation. The first thing I've got underlined in my notes in Tama County is we've only got it down to removing it down to 4 feet in the event that it is discontinued or decommissioned. And I think we'd all agree here, tile goes in 4 to 5 feet, doesn't it, most of the time? And 4 feet isn't enough, is it?
I think Worth County is 72 inches.
6 feet then, right? My math is right. I would lean more towards 5 to 6 feet, yes. Darren, you got an opinion on that? This is, well, it's just 3 different things.
Water line code is 5 foot.
Okay,
I've got a question, what is the definition of decommissioning?
that's a good one.
Cause this is hearsay, but I was told that, a wind turbine out east caught on fire, something happened to it, it wasn't working properly. So the landowner called, or like Conifer or somebody, to have it removed, or they were gonna remove it, okay, and the contract said dismantle. So they tore it down and they left. So the guy called the company and says, when are you gonna get this off my property? Well, all it said was may have been dismantled, but it didn't say removed from his property. Now, I don't know, that's hearsay information, that's what a judge would say.
I'll read through this real quick, cause I can't remember it all. I do know when I visited with Grundy County, she said at the time, if I'm not remembering, I hope I'm remembering it correctly, but she said they made in Grundy County the landowner responsible where the turbine is located for the removal of the turbine at the end of life, not the county, because the county is worried about suits and liability. And I kinda tend to agree with that. If the landowner wants to have a turbine on their property, we all know here that it's gonna get sold and resold to different companies over time, or is very likely possibility of that. And somewhere down on the end of the line, it's easy to say, well, hey, we're not responsible for that anymore, that wasn't included in the deal. And if we make the landowner responsible for it, that's definitely gonna be a detriment for them wanting to deal with it in the first place. That's one way of looking at it.
I've had retired employees of Alliant Energy say, Alliant Energy is never gonna dismantle them.
Right?
And I don't know if they buy just the electricity produced or the turbine, I have no idea, but,
I can't
you know,
answer
there's a
that.
you've got somebody that gets the contract signed, and then they sell those contracts to the developer, and the developer, you know, they sell the electricity or the wind turbine not to someone else, I don't know, but because of that paper trail,
Things can get lost.
things get lost.
Alan, you were gonna say something?
Yeah, well, could they have like an escrow that starts from day one, having money set aside
That's,
for
A bond.
decommissioning?
that's what Grundy County has done, and they just did this recently. It requires the approval of a third party that's not involved with either the landowner or the turbine company. Requires completion of an irrevocable letter of credit or a cash escrow account. And it does include damage done by to the roads in that process of decommissioning. So if they're hauling those heavy blades or what's left of them away and they damage the roads, that's included in that, so that the county doesn't get hung for that as well. And this thing, they wanna look at it a minimum every 3 years, and sometimes every year, just depending on circumstances. We all know everything keeps going up in cost.
It's bigger.
Yeah, bigger and better. I was thinking of that tonight. Darren, you know, we visited a couple of days ago. Look how much things have changed. You were widening out a driveway for a bin, right?
Yeah.
I've had a,
Been set up.
right, it used to be a 3,000 or 4,000 or 5,000 bushel bin was a good sized bin on the farm. My dad put up a 3,500 bushel bin that I'm still using, but that's peanuts, you know, anymore today. A 10,000 bushel bin isn't that big on the farm. So as things change, we gotta adapt to the change, and that's why we're here tonight, to start this discussion. We can't just ignore change and ignore everything that's going on.
Especially with the decommissioning and, changing the blades and stuff, when they change those blades and they put bigger blades on, which they will do, they're gonna come in and tear your road up again.
Right.
And this time around, who pays for the road? Us or them?
We should have that spelled out, that any improvements or changes made to the turbine any damage done to the road is responsible, the company's responsible for it,
Yeah.
not the county.
I think Worth County had some about that, like to check with the county before repowering as well. I think it was them or maybe it was somebody else, but get approval and make sure all ordinances are followed by that repowering company too. Because Vienna, they could come in and repower that and they wouldn't have to follow the ordinances. It's not in ours today. They could do whatever they want.
Along with repowering, you might wanna think about putting some language in the setback part, cause if, often when they repower, they also make the blades longer, which would increase the total height, which they can't move the tower, so we have to have a way to enforce that as well, that they're not
At any time,
lengthening the blade
Right.
to encroach on the setback that they already have. Cause a lot of times they will be at the edge of the setback before any improvements.
And I think Salt Creek currently, their FAA approval is for turbines up to 680 feet. So it's 650, plus the blade fully extended, so the FAA approval right now, for them is 680 feet.
Which I realize my math was wrong, so 704 feet for the setback of right of way would be correct on those maps, for 600 foot turbines.
Plus 40.
you got any more to add, Wade, on that?
No, the solar things, when they start removing them and they finding some of them have lead and they're hazardous and they're getting into all kinds of problems trying to move them to landfills and everything else. When we're talking about the decommissioning and it didn't, none of them is as specific about removing the stuff and making sure that it all goes to, you know, the proper, meets all EPA things, like if it's metal going to a metal recycler, if it's, hazardous waste, that it does go to a hazardous landfill. It kinda just says that this, things are removed, and I don't know, if it's just implied that if it's removed, that they, once it's off the property, that it's going to the right, if that needs to be addressed or not.
It's not specific, is it?
But I know with, a lot of the solar ordinances now, they're getting more, the newer ones, getting more specific that when they're decommissioned, you know, what happens, that it does go, that it's transported properly and it is required by all that stuff. And I don't know how much wording we need to have in that, but, if the thing is decommissioned, it's gone, then that ground ought to be just like it was before it was ever there. And it ought to be, it should have the opportunity for that. I guess if the landowner wants to leave a cement pad there, and he likes the cement pad, I wouldn't tell him he couldn't have it.
Right.
Can I ask, I mean, how about the removal of the transmission lines underground?
Those, from most of them that I've read, they can stay there. They aren't doing anything, it's just copper under the ground. It isn't, if they were, asbestos insulations and a lot of things like that, it'd probably be a little different, but I haven't seen any of the ordinance that I've read, the connections going down and everything have to be down to that, you know, but then the transmission lines can just be there. And
How deep do they put those transmission lines?
I think those were 5 foot minimum, weren't they?
I think it's 4 foot is what's in the wind easements is 4 foot down.
Was it 4?
At least in Salt Creeks, I don't know about what Orange County had, but Salt Creek has them 4 foot below the ground.
You know, it's interesting, we're trying to go green. In 30 years, we're gonna have how many billions and tons of copper buried in the ground? And we're not gonna recycle, we're not gonna go get it. I mean, it's just a thought for all these projects, the solar and the wind. It almost seems diabolical to me to be doing these kinds of things, but that's just my thought.
Same with electric cars, and I had someone make a comment to me the other day, why don't they let the economy, the people, determine the direction we're gonna go? Let the economy work it out, instead of the government stepping in and saying, hey, we're gonna subsidize this, we're gonna subsidize that. That's not a fair playing field anymore.
Well, your car should go 100 miles to a gallon. Why are you not doing that?
That's right.
That's not what we're talking about.
That's why we have an election coming up in November.
That's right. What about anything more about discontinuation or decommissioning?
Does anybody know how thick the wires are that are put in, like what gauge they are?
I don't.
My thought is, I wonder, I mean, if you were trying to pull a tile in and you hooked one of those, could you pull through it or not?
No.
Could not, or
I don't think you might.
I wouldn't, I doubt it.
That'd be kind of interesting, wouldn't it?
Yes.
None of that stuff rots or decomposes, so it's there forever. I mean,
And to my knowledge, our Tama County landfills already said they do not want to dispose of the blade, is that correct?
Yep.
They made
Put a
that.
high enough cost on it that it would be not wise of a wind company or
$10,000
solar
a
to
pound.
send it.
$10,000 a pound, I think. And it has to be cut into 4 foot sections and split in half.
That kind of speaks for itself, doesn't it?
You want me to address that?
Yeah.
Yeah, Lynn's down, he's on,
I forgot
he's
you
on the,
put that
board up there at the landfill.
I'm Len Snell from Elberon. I represent Elberon on the landfill commission, and I'm also the chairman, which neither here nor there. We are working on a policy with Easy Cog out of Cedar Rapids. We've had one meeting, well, we've had two meetings actually, and we're working on a policy about the disposal of all recyclable. Not only the turbine blades and solar panels, but also batteries. Now, they're taking some batteries now, the small ones, but we're starting to hear now that these, batteries in these cars, electric cars, and these, with Generex makes this battery that solar panels power the battery, that thing looks like it's as big as that table. And, so we're working on policy, we're drafting something up, we haven't come to determination yet, because there's a lot of stuff to go through to make sure we do it right. But, and also, I don't know if you know, but it was in the minutes of the meeting in June, the, fair representative, motioned, and it was seconded and passed to charge, what was it, they have to cut them lengthways
Yeah,
and
cut them
cut 'em-
lengthways into 4-foot sections, I think.
4-foot sections.
4-foot sections, the whole blade length, 4-foot sections, and then split in half. So
And
then they shell together.
$20,000 a pound
Or 10,
for the composite.
10,000 a pound. It was 10, I'm pretty sure, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, $10,000 a pound.
So we did do that back in the, just kind of a catch up because we hadn't done anything before. And she's also going, Alicia works with several counties, landfills, this side of the state. And she's coming up with what other landfills are doing. She's given us some information on what Benton County's doing. And so we're working on it. And everybody hears stories, but they're not compatible with what a small landfill like ours can handle.
And another thing too that a lot of people don't know is like in, for instance, Tama County, there's no ordinance against this stuff. And somebody like the Vienna project, for instance, this was brought up. If they repowered those or a blade fell off or something and they come over here to landfill with the blade and there's no ordinance and no rules over there that says, hey, we're not taking them, they're required to take them. So you have to have something. You
says
have to
you
have
won't take
something,
it.
or you're required to take it. That's why the $10,000 a pound thing came up, just as a temporary deal, and then they're starting to cover the, solar panels and batteries and all that stuff too. And then another thing was, I can't remember who it was that brought it up at the meeting. Somebody at the landfill meeting was talking to other counties and how these blades, they would try to find ways to get rid of them. They're extremely hard to do anything with them, to break them down, because they're made of some composite that's really hard to break down. They're not recyclable like they say they are. I mean, they're cost prohibitive to recycle. And I think it was Dave that talked to somebody that was trying to crush them, took a few of them to try and crush them and get them to compact or something. And they had an 80,000 pound packer and could not touch it. They'd slide off like on ice. And like Tama County's got it, was the 50,000 pound packer. And I mean, you just can't pack them. They don't compress, they don't compact, which is what you need in a landfill. You need to compact, and you can't do it, and they don't decompose. Which just from away from an ordinance standpoint, it's just not good for anybody.
And the ingredients that are in the solar panel there's nothing recyclable, I guess, or.
Yeah, it's just
Nobody wants that stuff.
No, it's just so
And
cost prohibitive to try to
The
recycle.
people that are taking that stuff out of the ground are spending thousands of dollars excavating and destroying the earth, diesel fuel and all that, to try to save energy by putting up a solar panel. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you.
The depth of someplace I had thought it was 5 feet, but I don't see anything in the Worth County other than it says they're buried. And I'm sure that, there are regulations on power, just like there are heights above the road, and things like that, on what minimum decibel, would have to research that. And if it isn't what we want, then we need to specify it in the ordinance. Like if it was 4 feet, but we want 5, then we need to specify that. So that's something we would need to add.
Right. I've got a note here. One other thing we haven't addressed yet. consequences for non-compliance. We need to put some teeth into this thing. Or does Worth County address anything like that?
Oh,
Wade, or am I catching you off guard?
Well, they have, kind of have a lot of different, a lot of wording on things to be in compliance and who's notified with what isn't in compliance and how it's handled, and it's quite a few pages on that stuff.
We don't have any, we don't have anything, do we? In Tama County, as far as consequences for non-compliance. You see anything there?
Yeah, there's nothing in Tama County.
There
They
is
can
no
actually do
complaint
like,
process.
they can actually do like a waiver and make like, if it's too loud, they can actually like do a waiver and say you have to deal with it at certain months. They can actually go worse instead of like any kind of complaint or process.
There was some wording in Worth County like that too, but the person complaining has to agree to it,
Yeah, which,
not somebody else.
yeah, and this one, I don't think it says that
Right,
in that.
and, you know, if you're the guy that's bothering and
Mhm.
they can pay you enough to make you happy, or you can buy a new house somewhere else, boy, then but that is, they do kinda have an option to, mitigate some of these things in the Worth County ordinance, but
Mhm.
you can't go around the guy that's getting imposed on what I've seen so far, but if we go with this, we still need to go do the same thing, go through
Item by item.
by item, and there, like I said, there are some in there that I think we need to tweak and adjust, and I think that, some of them are picked up right away, but then,
All right, so we've been at this an hour. Are there some topics that we haven't addressed that some of you folks wanna address here briefly that we haven't covered in Tama's or Worth? Yes, Laura?
Shadow flicker,
Yes.
yeah,
that's a pretty good one.
Worth is great, that's one that I had.
That's kinda got a time and setback, doesn't it? I mean, the further you get them away from residents.
It does help, yes, but there's also like times of day, they currently claim they'll only have like 30 hours a year or something, but that's.
Wintertime, the sun is lower, it's gonna shoot that
And then
shadow.
depending
flicker.
on where you're situated, you could be getting it through the whole season with the turbine around you, so.
About a lot about placement, especially, you know, if you're directly off to the east or west of a turbine, and the sun's
Right.
going up and down, well, if you can keep it away from east or west of the house, why not?
All right.
Flicker, Worth County, shadow flicker, no occupied residence of a THL, that's something, a participator, will experience more than 30 hours per year or no more than 30 minutes per day. And that's somebody that bought into it. No shadow flicker shall be experienced at a human occupied building of an adjacent property or property line of an adjacent building site of a non-turbine hosting landowner.
That's critical.
None, zero. And that was when I'd start, because I thought, you know, if you're participating and you want flicker all day long, I don't care if you have it. But then I thought, it's kind of like a seatbelt law, you know, to limit them to 30 minutes or something like, they might have kids. And, you know, would you want?
Nights.
I think-
You work nights and
right.
straight days. and-
That's where that good neighbor contract comes in, where they pay
Yeah,
$1,200 to the neighbors.
yeah, and you can flicker all day
Just
long.
to, you know, not.
But they're still.
They're actually participating then, aren't they?
Right, then you're participating, and you can get 30 hours a year, 30 minutes a day, so for 2 months, you could have a half hour a day of flicker. If you're participating. But if you're not participating, none.
Mhm.
As far as the transmission lines, I did get a little information on that, they're typically above ground, they're the big high power lines, so most of the transmission lines are typically above ground, they're big high-speed transmission lines, like in the old railroad bed between Dysart and Traer, north of Toledo on 63, so most of the power goes on the big power lines, I mean, they'll have to connect into the big grid. but so
Well, that's
they're not
after the-
necessarily underground.
That's after the substation, everything before the substation's underground.
Yeah, before the, so once they get to the substation, which is the one that's proposed just south of my house on.
Yeah,
and
the
Avenue.
3,400, 34,000, 34 KVA, I think it is.
Doug, I've got another one. How about, term limits or time limits on permits that can be revoked and have to be reapplied for? And also possibly application fees that would help cover at least the administration costs of all these other,
What do you call them, what kind of fees?
administration fees.
Oh, administration.
Yeah, Worth County, that's another
I'm
one
sure
that
they have
they
another word for it.
have pages of stuff on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
per turbine, they gotta like put
To
1,000
help with compliance
bucks or-
costs and paperwork costs of the county.
What was the first thing you said, Laura, before administration fees?
Turn them.
Time
Oh,
limit
that's
for
right.
Permits, right now they're wide open in the county, so there's,
Expiration date.
like Salt Creek permit
Expiration.
has no expiration, and it's been a year and a half.
Expiration dates on the
Conditional
use
use
permits.
permits, yep.
And then also possibly, I'm not sure what you were thinking about for putting your teeth, like you said, putting your teeth in it, but maybe have revoking the permits as a possible consequence.
Have
Or
what?
revoking the permits as a possible consequence. I'm not sure, you'd have to probably do really steep fines to make it anything off their back, but, not sure what else maybe Worth has for consequences to model after.
We don't currently have any expiration date on our
No.
CUPs.
Nothing.
And then also, yeah, more of the, complaint process fleshed out, who we would go to, how they would go about delegating who would deal with the complaint, or verifying it.
Nick, you might find this interesting. When I talked to the Grundy County Zoning Administrator today, she was aware that I think she was aware that we do the conditional use permit. And then it goes to the Board of Adjustment to authorize that. She said in Grundy County, they do it differently, that the Board of Adjustment did not want that kind of responsibility in Grundy County. So they delegated it back to the zoning, and they require a different zoning be addressed for wherever they're gonna build turbines.
Really?
So they kind of, if I understood her correctly, they kind of passed the buck back to the zoning commission. And I didn't ask her how many people are on the zoning commission in Grundy County, I don't know.
It makes sense though.
You know, it puts a lot of weight on somebody's shoulders,
Yeah.
no matter where you put
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Well, true. But it gives you the opportunity, you know, did you guys even know that a permit was being approved or that you needed to, I guess you don't have to answer that, but it's just good to make sure you guys, if you would've known it was coming, if you didn't know, you could've started updating the ordinances, so. And maybe that's just a side thing, every so often review it, whether it's 2 years or 5 years or
Yes.
whatever the time, you know, frame is. For expirations, I think cups are usually like 1 year, and what it does is it's reviewed in 1 year, and then they decide if it's still good, or does it need, you know, like, hey, this has changed, we need a redo. So I think it's, let's review it every year and decide if it's still valid, or if we need to get a new one, per se. Cause like you said, things change so fast.
Could you read Tama County's ordinance on, like, decommissioning?
I will. Discontinuation and decommissioning, under the letter N. A CWEX shall be considered a discontinued use after 1 year without energy production, unless a plan is developed and submitted to the zoning administrator outlining the steps and schedule for returning the CWEX to service. All CWEX and accessory facilities shall be removed to 4 feet below ground level within 180 days of the discontinuation of use. Each CWEX shall have a decommissioning plan outlining the anticipated means and cost of removing CWEX at the end of their serviceable life or upon becoming a discontinued use. The cost estimate shall be made by a professional engineer licensed in the state of Iowa. The plan shall also identify the financial resources be available to pay for the decommissioning and removal of the CWEX and accessory facilities. The county reserves the right to verify that adequate decommissioning terms are contained in the landowner easement. If you're like me, you gotta have things read to you 2 or 3 times before it sinks in.
And what page is that on?
And they don't have the pages numbered, it's just,
Number 10.
about the second from the last, third from the last.
Was it N you said, Doug?
M, yeah, there's, safety was M, and then N is discontinuation, decommissioning. So, they're addressing it, but I don't see it as very,
Well, and then the wind company's easement says if they don't remove it within 1 year, it's the landowner's responsibility. So, it doesn't say they will, it says if they don't remove it. So like it's, the landowner's thinking, oh, it'll be removed, but it doesn't say they have to remove it, it says if they remove it within 1 year.
Doug, you also haven't touched on signal interference, with cell phones and emergencies and television.
I don't think Tama County addresses that, do they? Wade? But signal interference and cell phone interference.
That was probably written originally before they had 911.
They require like
And
tower
cell
to
phone.
tower, because I know like Salt Creek did that test, it must be somewhere in there, but it's not
I might
like,
be wrong.
it's not from like, the police car, if they're driving through a wind turbine, I mean, it's just tower to tower, I believe, so.
Well, a lot of people don't get satellite or cable, they're going off of over-the-air digital waves, so that would also be something to consider besides emergency.
All it says, under submittal requirements, under 13, item 13, location of all known communications towers, facilities within 2 miles of the proposed CWEX. All that's saying is, they need to know within 2 miles of a turbine, am I understanding that correctly? Just says location of all known communication tower facilities within 2 miles of the proposed CWEX.
What does Worth County have, do they have something better, I don't remember. Just another item to figure
That we
out.
need to deal with.
Mhm. I know Grundy and a lot of other counties are looking into sending mailers to anybody in the proposed project from the county at the beginning of before they even start going out getting easements. They send a mailer to everyone, and they even go like, I think 1 or 2 miles outside of that footprint, so everybody knows, because it's a common tactic of wind farms to go out and get the easements, tell the big landowners, and then the acreage owners, you find out like a month before, and the deal's done already, there's nothing you can do to stop it.
Worth County, notice of filing should be made, mailed to the auditor pursuant to section, something there. The auditor, conservation, county review, public hearing. Upon completing the county review, the county shall set a public hearing to be held no more than 30 days after the county review period. Representatives familiar with the aspects must be present at the public hearing. Notice and time and the place of the public hearing shall be published and mailed by the auditor in the same manner as the filing of 5 above. The cost of such publications and mailing shall be paid by the applicant. Purpose of the public hearing is to review final plan submission and in 30 days of the public hearing. There's one they gotta mail out to everybody.
Is it in the
A mailing.
beginning or at the end though? Is it when they first show up, or is it right before the final approval? Cause that's really important too. 'Cause
No
if you're
later
gonna
than
be
7
living-
days after filing an application, the applicant should provide a notice.
Yeah, so this would be in the
Once a week.
beginning, like not once they submit it, cause it's done deal at that point, right? Like, you need to
Filing
start
notice.
understanding right away. So that's pretty important.
But it's mailed to each landowner in the applicant, everybody that's within the area,
Well, that says landowner though, would that include the acreage owners?
and to each city located within 1 mile of the project area.
Mhm. Yeah, as long as it's at the beginning, not the end of the project.
Could you tell me that page, please?
Yeah, what page are you on?
That's on 24 if I'm reading it right.
24, all right.
Residents.
Residents, not residents.
Maybe I might be real, that's to each landowner identified in the application. But I agree, it
I
needs to
think
get, everybody needs to get.
Yeah, I think Grundy was talking about doing it, so they might be good ones to ask that question too.
So we're not here all night. We've kind of discussed Tama County's wind turbine in relation to some of the other counties. And I'm addressing the three of us here mostly, including myself. We can see that it's gonna take some time, some meetings to iron all these out, iron all these issues out. So it's not something we're gonna get done tonight or in 1 or 2 nights. I guess I would entertain a motion that reflects that. However you wanna word it, if you wanna call it a moratorium for 6 months, if you wanna, I don't know what you wanna do. I'm entertaining a motion in that regard to give us time as a zoning board, because the three of us here realize in another 2 weeks, we're gonna be busy in the field. Not that we're not busy now. And, go ahead, Wade.
No, you,
Well, we aren't gonna be able to meet for a while until we get into the fall months and we're done with harvest, and we've got 3 of us out of 4 here tonight, thankfully you showed up. So I'm gonna leave it at that, and I'll see what the rest of the board wants to do.
We appreciate you at least hearing our concerns, you know.
And talking to us about things.
You're very
can
welcome.
can we recommend a moratorium on, would it be on new construction or on approval, or what could?
Any
what would
expansion, any further expansion,
Pardon?
any further expansion?
Well, then I would move that we recommend a moratorium on any more expansion until we can get the ordinances that we can approve, that we can approve a new ordinance that we agree on. And, well,
Did you say a time on it? Wait, I didn't hear you. I didn't remember. Period of time for the moratorium?
6 months.
6-month moratorium?
You think you can do it in 6 if you said you're gonna be busy for 2?
We have to move fast on this, we can't, there's a lot of work to do.
We're gonna have to
You
meet.
do, like, I know other counties.
Is that gonna cover also the zoning, or for the solar?
No,
At the same
I'll
time,
touch
or
on that
we-
after we get this done.
So this is just windmill,
Right, this is just
Okay.
wind, is that correct? Wade,
Right.
your motion?
Right, to move.
and you're saying it'd be new projects or new phases, is that an accurate statement?
Whatever we can,
Yep.
wherever we can put the brakes on now, so I don't know exactly the correct way to word it.
Cause that would be anything that's not currently approved, new
Right,
projects
that-
or new
that
phases.
We can,
Could we also throw in new permits, new projects, phases, or permits, and then you could be covering everything.
right,
We better get this down right, Andrea.
Will this cover Salt Creek 1, this moratorium?
That's already been
I
permitted.
believe it's already got its CUP, doesn't it?
That's already been.
I think what you're doing is future projects or it could be phases, so phase 2 of Salt Creek or any new wind projects that come through for approval, right?
So basically want a moratorium on any new permits, or any new or
New wind.
expansion of any renewable energies, any renewable energy projects, how's that?
that's what I,
That's why we have code.
That way you cover everything.
Renewable energies helps us cover solar at the
Yeah.
same time, yeah.
Covers everything, and just
okay.
gives you all a time, chance to put the brakes on and just think about it.
Do you wanna cover solar the right away with this motion? Is that what,
I think it's good for,
we haven't even.
for commercial.
For commercial
For
industrial,
commercial,
right?
yes, the farmer's putting up his own little windmill or putting solar panels on the barn, I don't think we
Right.
need to hold that, but any commercial, that would put more
Solar.
on any more commercial,
Renewable energy.
development for 6 months, and
You got that, Andrea?
Working on it.
So Wade is recommending a motion to have,
But he's making a motion to
making a motion to have a 6-month moratorium on renewable energy. Any
So we're-
expansion of further, new projects, new phases, new permits.
of wind and solar.
When it's sold.
Is that
Yeah.
correct, Wade?
You might wanna throw in at the beginning, making a recommendation to the board of supervisors, cause that's who you're recommending it to.
Right.
I don't know how,
I don't know if we need to put that in there or not.
if we could get it done sooner than the moratorium, if we could get it done in 5 months, then I would lift that, but I don't know how lengthy you can make a motion, so.
Right.
You can have the board,
Is there a second?
Who writes this?
Who writes this?
Yeah.
I believe
Does some
it's,
lawyer puts it together or what?
that's a good question. That's another question that comes into play here as far as we're gonna
I think you
need.
can do that, I'm trying to think if it's covered in a budget somewhere for the county or not. That'd be a question to ask, because
What's covered?
talk to Jeff Gorbel, like a lawyer cost to review it. I'm assuming, I don't know if you guys would write it, or if they would write it, or they for sure
Well,
would
one thing
review
we're doing,
it.
we're making a recommendation,
Mhm.
and, you know, if
Yeah.
we're can't do it, then that's what it is, but that's, I'm moving
That's
that,
our
we recommend
stand.
that.
So we take all these concerns in and you just put it into this, right? Update it, done, bam.
Right.
See,
We
sorry, I'm
address-
all about moving and shaking and getting shit done.
Right.
And
Well, Worth County is really good, so
Well,
like
I-
Wade's suggestion, if you take Worth counties and tweak it a little bit,
Right, I
or
think,
go Benton County route, I mean, those are your two easiest, fastest ways to do
I
it.
think the fastest way for us, I never saw anything in Worth County I wouldn't do, and I'd add a little bit to it.
Yep.
And I think we could, but some of the things that people brought up tonight, if we've got them in there, then.
They spent countless hours working on that,
Yeah.
just horrible stuff.
Use Jeff as your resource.
Worth,
for sure.
Worth County has done a lot of the homework
Why,
that you guys don't
Yeah.
have.
right,
Right, and
So-
to try to bring that up to this, we would need 6 years.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's easier to start there.
If we start here, well, anyway, I made that motion.
that's the motion. Is there a second? I guess is what I'm asking.
Yeah.
You second it? Okay, so it's been moved and seconded, the motion. Is there any further discussion?
Yeah, I
All
was
in
just wondering,
favor?
another thing to add is, I wonder what as far as the Tama County ordinance, as far as like their setbacks to an active eagle's nest. And if-
Yeah,
Environmental.
yeah.
You're right, it's mentioned.
Well, currently, none of the DNR recommendations have to be followed.
They're just recommendations.
Yeah.
Right.
It's under XV1, that would be 16.
I think Worth County addresses it.
I'll read Tama's. Identification of significant migratory patterns and nesting areas for birds within 2 miles.
Would that include raptors? Technically, I think
Well-
I think there's, isn't that 5 mile on active nest?
Raptors are migratory birds.
But also
Is that
bats.
even, eagles winter in Iowa?
Yeah.
Right.
Now, do they migrate, or are they migratory birds? Not really, that's more waterfowl, isn't it?
So all they've gotta do is submit the following. They gotta identify the patterns
Oh,
and the nesting areas. Doesn't say they gotta do anything about it, they just gotta identify them within 2 miles.
oh, okay.
That's all it's saying.
Okay.
Did you find it?
Yeah.
Wait, is there?
Well, I was just looking, when I was reading through Worth County, like a public area, recreation area is a half mile, public conservation area is a mile. And I'm thinking you can put them up by somebody's house, but you got a conservation area, you gotta stay a mile away. You know,
Excuse me,
kinda, some of those were.
I need to back you guys.
Woodland or grassland is a half
Yes.
mile. Iowa DNR recognized these as Eagles Nest is a mile. Zoning district boundaries, you know, they kind of address a lot. It looks like a lot of people, well, anyway,
What were
the
you gonna-
motion was seconded.
Right, motion is
Motion
second, but
is
there's
second.
still a little discussion.
Do we have a vote?
We're gonna vote now. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And I don't think the president generally, I'll say aye, but yeah, president does
Yeah.
vote.
Yes,
He just can't make the motion.
Cannot make a motion.
So we have 3 ayes.
3 ayes.
Motion passed.
Do you guys wanna vote on officially getting a chairman? since there are three of you here?
I think we should wait until see if we get another person on board. 'Cause I know they've got some applications, and yes,
What's the time frame on this application, this new
Oh.
person?
oh, the new person,
Yes,
you'd have to address the Board of Supervisors on that. I know they've got at least one application that I'm aware
yes, they
of.
make the appointment.
They make the appointment.
They said they would accept applications through the 16th,
And then they'll make a decision by the 26th, is
By
that
the 16th of this month,
correct? And
so
then,
they've only got 4 more days.
and then the 26th, they're gonna have somebody select
Appointed.
by the 26th. So
Okay.
application cease on the 16th, and I think appointment no later than the 26th, is that right, guys?
Yeah, that's what Richard said, I
Does
believe.
that sound right? Okay.
Now, before we adjourn, do you guys have a suggestion on our next meeting? As far as time and date of year, time of year and date?
I think we better do it soon, because we're gonna start rolling in the field.
Do you want to, try something before harvest then, is that what you're saying?
Yes, I mean,
That's just what you wanted to hear, I didn't hear.
So I
Before
got
you-
nothing running yet.
Before you do that, so you guys made the vote, I'm trying to remember from Jeff Gorbel's speech, do you have to do 2 public hearings now? Saying that that's what you're recommending before it goes to the supervisors, is that how this next step works
for a moratorium.
for the moratorium?
That I don't know, I think actually, all we're doing is making a recommendation to the
Yep.
supervisors. They have the authority to
I feel like you guys have.
establish the moratorium.
I think you guys need public hearings though too, does anybody?
no, in the past, whenever we've done a zoning change or something, we've done it,
Okay,
and then
so the
send
supervisors
it
should
to
do
the,
it too.
send it to the supervisor.
And they have to approve it, see, they have to approve our actions tonight. And if they did approve the moratorium, which,
Then you'd have the public hearings after that,
then that's when the public hearing takes
from
place.
board of supervisors, okay.
It's gotta be in the paper
Mm-hmm,
2 times before the meeting and
okay,
allow a public hearing for the public to come in and comment on it before they make their final decision.
okay.
Generally speaking, I better not say it.
I think you need to make it clear that we're not putting a moratorium on, we're just holding off, and we're gonna really push to get this done.
Right.
I wanna get this done. and
Get it over with.
And get a good
Ordinance.
ordinance.
So when's your next meeting?
That's just what I was thinking. You wanna try 1 week, 2 weeks?
I'd go a week. Is that okay, dear?
And what, do we wanna set an agenda right now on what we're gonna try to cover? Do we-
I think I would
Start
like to
with
start with Worth County.
All right.
And I think we could each take it home and then just,
You've got a copy, don't you, Darren, if you didn't lose it?
What's that?
The Worth County ordinance?
I don't know if I have it.
I gave, well, we'll get another copy made. We'll get it to you. I know I left one there at the farm, but whether you've got it or not is another.
and just start and work through it. And the things that some people brought up, like, maybe we do want some CSR included in there, that if it's 90 CSR or something. But in some of these, Tama County, we got too much good land, so
Yeah, we
I
do.
don't know if we can push it down that far, but,
Do they want, do they like a high CSR because that's normally flat land? And in order to get these semi trailers in with these long blades, does that have anything to do with it? You know, going over
Hills and that?
hills and stuff? I don't know.
I would think they'd be looking for ridges of wind,
Yeah.
for one thing.
Yeah.
And I've been told in Benton County, you know, the river bottoms will be under 70 because of the CSR wettability, but they don't want river bottoms, so Benton County pretty well protected themselves.
Yeah,
Do you have a question? Nancy? Okay. Well, do you wanna set a meeting for 1 week from tonight, or 2 weeks from tonight, or what do you think, Darren?
It's good when we.
1 week,
yeah, I'd like to get through this.
Same time?
6:30? Does that work?
It's,
Yeah, it's gonna have.
And that is the 19th?
we gotta get the paper again.
Oh, we can't do it that soon. We gotta wait 2 weeks, we gotta get the paper notification.
Sorry.
That's all right.
My baby's smiling.
Laura, can I ask you that question or not? As far as, what would be the soonest we could have a meeting as far as getting it published?
So you have to post it publicly here and put it in the 2 designated Tama County newspapers, which we did for this one. But the deadline to get it in on Friday was 9 o'clock today.
That's right,
So you won't be able to get it in until,
week from today.
yeah, so it won't even be published till a week from Friday.
So we gotta add 2 weeks, we gotta make it, 26th, is that a possibility then? I gotta look at the calendar and figure that out.
Well, maybe you should wait until after they appoint on the 26th, if they're gonna select.
That's a good idea.
Calendar up there.
Right up there, so if the 26th is the date of appointing a new person.
Yeah, so if you got, you know, it won't even be in the paper until the 23rd. And then you
Right.
get 10 days notice.
That gets you into October,
And
3rd,
it gets you to October 3rd, I think.
3rd.
That would give you time for a new person if they are appointed on the 26th.
So that means our next meeting is gonna be October 3rd at the soonest, is that correct?
Okay, well, it's
I
10 o'clock at night, then when we get out of the field.
When? 10 o'clock at night when they get out of the field. Oh.
Yeah, we're
Maybe
gonna
we'll
be,
rain that
That's,
day and
that's
it's done like
dedication,
it.
guys, we appreciate it, we appreciate your dedication.
so October 3rd we're looking at.
The first Monday in October is when most of the cities and the towns have their council meetings. That may not interfere with you, but as far as the public's concerned,
All right,
and it's your decision, of course.
all right. What do you think, guys?
I'd
You wanna
rather
change
be
the
here
time
than the
too?
council meeting.
Is 6:30 too early? You wanna make it later since we're gonna be doing meetings, or? It ain't gonna work no matter what we do, it isn't gonna be very friendly.
Maybe it'll rain that afternoon.
Yeah, you're right.
I'll go
We're only
ahead
hope
and
for
request
rain.
some rain.
Then when you got livestock, you got work to do.
It's tough, but this could drag on and on and on and on, I think we need to
Get down to it. We'll meet together, kinda iron out some details before we meet publicly, would probably be, or we'll talk about it, put it that way. Let's set it October 3rd then, is 6:30 all right with you guys, or?
What about 7 o'clock? 6:30.
Let's leave it at 6:30 so it's simple and it's the same.
Okay.
And that means I've gotta remember to, remind me, dear, to get it published. So, is there any, I would entertain a motion to adjourn if there's nothing else.
move we adjourn.
You'll second it, all right?
What was the reason that Todd said he couldn't be here? He advised him-
Same as the supervisors, I believe, their attorneys advising them not to meet.
And why not?
That's a good question.
No comment.
What's
I mean,
it gonna hurt? That's my question.
Well, and second of all, that's a way of communication to make us understand what's going on, not behind closed doors. I think they should have a right to tell us. I have a concern, cause my farmer that's around my farm, he surrounds me. And I don't want it, but they could have an easement for underground wiring, which I don't want. I have waterways, I
Right.
have windbreaks, I'm making it to, more conservation. And I'm really upset with that. But they asked me twice, and I told them no twice,
All right?
and, no. And it's gonna be state anyway. I donate to American Heritage Foundation, they will have a fight.
Can I-
Guarantee it.
Can I get your name, please?
My name?
Yes.
Rita.
Rita.
Rita?
Dostum.
Oh, okay, Rita. I'm sorry, you live just out north of town here, don't you?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Well, thank you guys very much. I
Yes.
really
Yes, we-
appreciate you guys taking the time, listening to us. You can see there's a full room of people here that we care about the county. A lot of us are from here. We have farms, we have acreages, we have family. So So we appreciate you guys taking the time to do this and do it right, to protect everybody.
Yeah, thank you for
It's a breath of
listening.
fresh air.
You're very welcome.
I appreciate it.
Thanks
I
for
mean,
taking the first step.
going to meetings and not have no comment.
It gets old, doesn't it?
It is frustrating.
I've been to a couple.
And I like the way you guys are discussing,
Yes.
it's good to hear what your thoughts are.
Okay, and thank you for being open, we appreciate that very much.
Appreciate putting in the time.
Yes.
You're welcome, thank you.
And try and get the ordinance up